Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my support Bible. You might have clicked on this video not knowing what to expect, but basically I'm going to be going over the best build, the optimal builds like weapons, artifacts, stats, talents, all that stuff, even what level you should get every single support character in Genshin Impact. Now, I have done extensive research, and so has my friend Zajef77, who made a spreadsheet, helped me a lot with this. Check out his channel. So overall, we did a lot of research, but it is prone to changes. Like, I don't main every character, so I did a lot of research. I talked to mains of every character, but maybe something will change in the future. Maybe we'll find out that a weapon that I didn't think of is actually better. So be sure to check the pinned comment in case anything changes. I'll be sure to update this guide because I don't want to misinform anyone. It's one of my biggest fears on YouTube. So yeah, I don't know how long this video is going to be. I hope it's not too long. It's really going to be detailed on every character, and there should be every character in the timestamp, so you can skip to whichever one you want. And this is going to be a support Bible, so I'm not going to be talking about like how to DPS with characters. So when I talk about Beidou, yes, you can build their DPS, yes, you can build their support, but I'm going to be focusing on how to use the character as a support, how you should be leveling them, gearing them, all that stuff. I really hope this video is enjoyable. I stream every night on Twitch. Follow me if you want. That being said, guys, let's get right into it. The first thing we need to talk about is some general information that applies to every character. So generally, you want to be leveling most characters to level 60 out of 70. Now, what does level 60 out of 70 mean? It means that you get them to level 60, but then you ascend them, past 60, which unlocks, as you guys probably know, their second talent. So you get your first talent by ascending a character to level 20 out of 40, so you ascend them once. And then after that, your other talent will be locked until you ascend them to 60 out of 70. Now, usually for a support character, it's not worth leveling them all the way to 70. Like, getting XP past 60 usually is irrelevant and doesn't make a big deal. But for some characters, it does. So I will be kind of specifying when you should level a character past 60 out of 70. For example, Albedo, who scales very well on base defense, might want to level further. So basically, for most characters, it's 60 out of 70, and you can assume that's what you'd want. And I will be sure to tell you guys if you want more, less, or whatever. Another important thing is for a character you're using as a support, a burst support, healer, whatever, you don't want to be leveling their normal attacks, right? Like, if you're not DPSing with them, you're not normal attacking with them, charge attacking, there's no reason to level this talent. So just maximizing your E and your Q is usually what you want to do on these characters. Lastly, I just want to say, I try to give you guys the best builds, what I think is optimal and what I've found to be optimal. But yeah, that being said, we're going to get into specific characters now, and we're going to try to organize this per element. So it'll be like Anemo, and then Geo, and then, one element at a time. And then the main character will be at the end, and other characters that I don't talk about, I'll specify, like DPS characters, at the very end. Let's get right into it. For Sucrose, there are two ways to build her, and go check out my Sucrose guide if you want more information. But in general, Viridescent Venerer is a set that you need on her, regardless of how you build her. But when I say there's two different ways to build her, that's because you can either build her as an Elemental Mastery bot, who just serves as someone to use Swirl to proc the Viridescent effect, and then give Elemental Mastery to whoever you swap into, right? To other characters, because of her passive, right? If you guys don't know, she does give a lot of Elemental Mastery. So, you can stack Elemental Mastery on her on literally everything. That's what I do. But if you do care about your Sucrose's damage, you can actually run Anemo percent on the goblet, right? Anemo damage bonus, and you can run crit or attack on the circlet. But I tend to run her as an Elemental Mastery bot. For your talents, once again, it depends if you want damage or you're literally just using her for the Viridescent effect and Elemental Mastery as a low investment support. If you do want damage, be sure to maximize your Q and your E. Generally speaking, Sacrificial Fragments is just the best book on her. It's so good. Skyward Atlas can be a good option for damage, and Thrilling Tales can be good for literally just buffing your raw damage on your other character, like if you're going for a big hit or something. But in general, Sacrificial Fragments, especially with Refinement, is her best book. And a good free-to-play option is the Mapamari. For Venti, you obviously want the Viridescent Venerer set because it's genuinely just like one of the best sets in the game. You really want it on your Anemo supports. And you want to build him like a burst support because of how much damage his ultimate deals, how much damage his talents deal in general. So for the Sands, attack percent is ideal. I know Elemental Mastery and Energy Recharge can be viable, but overall for damage, attack percent is definitely the way to go, with an Anemo damage bonus on the goblet and crit on the circlet. The reason I run him as a burst support is because of how much damage his ult deals. It's just so much, guys. If you have Venti, you already know he does a ton of damage. Because of that, you want to be leveling both of his skills. I would say prioritize his Q, but his E is also worth to level. One thing I want to say, however, is if you can get Energy Recharge on a substat, that is very, very good for Venti. It's something you should be looking for alongside your crit and your attack. For weapons, Venti has a ton of good options and is actually very free-to-play friendly because of how good Favonius Warbow is for him, since he will be critting a lot. Best free-to-play option, definitely Favonius Warbow. If not, Stringless is insane on him, Viridescent Hunt can be good too, and Skyward Harp is usually the best if you do have it. Jean is a character I don't have, but I have done research on how to build her, and she is absolutely insane if you are willing to invest into her. As a matter of fact, she does very well with investment, which is why a lot of people early game are underwhelmed by her and think she's not that great. But late game, especially in Abyss, she shines really well because she can heal a bunch, she can be an Anemo support, abuse fall damage, use Viridescent Venerer, and she deals a nice amount of burst damage. On top of that, she has a cleanse, which is especially useful in Abyss. It cleanses like debuffs, and it's just very, very nice. For Jean, you can keep her at level 6 out of 70 if you want, but levels actually matter for her for like fall damage abuse and just for the way she works. And just in general, like getting her to level 80 out of 80 if you have enough resources to is worthwhile. You do want to level her talents, especially her elemental burst, because of just all the ridiculous amounts of scaling that do go up every time you level it. Her burst is very, very good. Definitely prioritize this. Artifact set wise, I always recommend the 4-piece Viridescent Venerer. You could do like Noblesse if you already have another Anemo support or something, but I really think 4-piece Viridescent Venerer is insanely broken, so running that on Jean is a good idea. With low investment / in the early game, attack percent on your artifacts can be smart, but in the late game what you want is a more damage focused build. So on the Goblet you want a Nemo damage bonus and crit on the Circlet, and for your Sands, I've seen energy recharge and I've seen attack percent. Personally, from what I've seen, energy recharge seems to be better, but I can't test it because I don't have Jean. For your weapon, you'd want something with energy recharge, so Skyward Blade is probably the way to go if you have it. If not, there are some other pretty good options with energy recharge, especially Festering Desire, which is a free option if you did the event. It is a free-to-play friendly weapon. But all the ER swords like Favonius, Sack Sword are all pretty good, and the Flute can actually work well on Jean as well. Running Ning as a support can actually be quite efficient, despite her role as a DPS used by most, but there are actually two ways to build her as a support. So you can either run her a high investment burst support route, which is what I use when I run her as a support. I run her in a quick swap team, which means I'm going to press my Q, my E, and swap, right? And then for that, you'd want 2 Petra, 2 Noblesse, and you want to maximize, you actually want to really invest into her, so you want to maximize everything, attack, Geo Goblet, and crit on the Circlet. And for your weapon, any 5-star catalyst is really good on her. I use Skyward Atlas, Witsith can be good, Solar Pearl if you have it, and for a free-to-play option, Map Amari is pretty good. Now, if you're running a low investment Ning build, you can actually go for the 4-piece Petra to give a 35% damage bonus to the crystal you pick up, right? So let's say you make a Hydro crystal, you can pick it up on your Ning, then swap to your child, and will have a 35% damage bonus, which is very nice. So you can run her like that. And if you're doing that, you actually don't need to invest a lot of resources into your Ningguang, so you can just run a Thrilling Tales if you want to. So low investment, you don't need talents, but as a burst support, you definitely want to maximize your Q, get that as high level as you can, and then your Jade Screen is also pretty nice. So your burst and your skill are both stuff you should upgrade. And obviously we're not talking about DPS Ning, so normal attacks aren't really a factor. So for Zhongli, there's actually a few ways to build them, but I'd say the most optimal way to build Zhongli is as a burst support who relies on his ultimate's damage. Now, I've seen people run him as a shield bot, and if you do need a shield and like you're struggling with Abyss, you're taking too much damage, whatever, you can build HP on him, but I think the best way to build him is a burst support with attack on the Sands, Geo damage on the Goblet, and crit damage on the Circlet, or crit rate, obviously. Now, energy recharge and crit are all really good substats. Same with HP. Like HP on him is good because it buffs your shield and gives you some ult damage, but the scaling for your ult on attack is much better than on HP. So only build HP if you just want him as a shield bot, as I said, but overall attack and crit are what you're looking for. Now because of that, you want to be maxing his elemental burst as high as you can because it does deal a ton of damage. One of Zhongli's biggest weaknesses is that he doesn't generate particles very quickly unless you run him with other Geo characters. So in a Geo quick swap team or with Ning / Albedo, he can be very, very powerful because he can spam his ultimate non-stop. So in those types of teams, you don't really need energy recharge, so the best spears are stuff with crit rate or crit damage, like Deathmatch, Blackcliff Pole, or Jade Spear if you have it, and all 5-star spears are good. Now, if you don't have another Geo with him, you might want more energy recharge, you might need it. So Prototype Star Glitter as a free-to-play weapon can be very, very good. Favonius Lance is also a great option if you need energy recharge. For Albedo, there are actually 2 different ways to build them, and both are very good. One requires more investment than the other, but both are very good late game and are just great options, so I'm going to talk about both of them in detail. So in my Albedo guide, I kind of ran them as a burst support, but I did pin a comment saying you can build them defense if you want to. Now that's because you can either run him as a burst support that focuses on his Q, or a defense support that focuses on his E, presses E, lets it do a bunch of damage over time, and doesn't really care about his ultimate since the animation is so long. You just deal a bunch of damage from the defense scaling on your passive elemental skill. And that's kind of how you play him. You run him with Harbinger of Dawn, you leave the E out, and that's it. The other way of playing him is to run him as a burst support who will spam his E for the attack scaling, and he will use his ultimate for this huge burst. Now, theory crafters are still debating which one's better, and I've seen heated arguments. So instead of commenting on it, I'm just going to show you guys how you can build both, and you guys can choose to build them the way you want. Personally, I enjoy dealing a lot of damage in one hit. I like seeing huge bursts, so I run him as a burst support, but the defense build is also great and requires less investment. So for a burst support build, you'd want 2 Noblesse with 2 Petra for sure, because you get 20% burst damage, and you get 15% geo damage bonus, which is very nice. For this build, you would prioritize attack and crit, which means you'd have attack percent on the sands, geo damage bonus on the goblet, and crit damage or crit rate on the circlet. For the burst build, obviously you would max your burst. E you should level as well because it's very nice, but especially your burst. Now, if you do run him as a defense sort of support, there are actually a lot of good artifacts. You can run a 4-piece Petra to just be a pure support for your main DPS. You'll pick up the crystal, give damage bonus to him, and just deal a ton of damage over time with your defensive scaling on your E, just passively. Another really good option, and especially good in the early game because of how cheap it is actually a 2-piece Defender's Will. 2-piece of this gives you 30% defense, which is actually pretty huge for Albedo, and you can run a 2-piece Defender's Will with a 2-piece, 2-piece Petra, and that's just a ton of damage passively on your E. For this build, you would want defense on the sands, geo damage on the goblet as well, but for the circlet, you can either have crit, like rate or damage, or you could also have defense on the circlet, and I've heard that both are good, and defense might actually be slightly better for this build, so yeah. Weapon-wise, for a burst support, you want energy recharge. Festering Desire is really good on Albedo, but you could just run anything that has energy recharge, like even Favonius Sword is very good, and I've heard that late game Aquila is actually just a ton of damage because of the high base attack and the passive, and I tend to use Skyward Blade on them. Now, Harbinger of Dawn is the best 3-star option, but is also just the best option period for the defense build. Now, for the burst build, from the calcs that I've seen, it seems that other weapons can outscale it and the energy recharge is better for the late game, but Harbinger of Dawn for the defense build is the best one overall because of the high crit damage and crit rate you get just by refining it as a 3-star, which is very easy. But do know that as a burst support, you want to be ulting pretty much on cooldown, so it might be like a quick swap team or just a team that generates a ton of particles. Also, for a defense Albedo, leveling him up all the way, like actually to 80 out of 80 or 90 out of 90, can actually be beneficial because it increases your base defense, and since you don't have like a feather for defense, getting base defense is actually pretty significant for a defense build. Let's quickly talk about Noelle. I think you should run a white blind on her if you have it. I don't because I don't have any Claymore prototypes right now, but the white blind is definitely something you should run if you are running her. If you need a 3-star option, the white iron greatsword, which I cannot seem to find, there it is, can be good, but definitely go for the white blind if you can get it. I'd say 4-piece Petra is the way to go, just because the 35% damage bonus of the crystal you pick up on her, and then, you swap your main DPS, can be very good. You can also run 4 maidens if you want more healing on her, because I know Noelle's healing, especially early game, can be sort of underwhelming, at least for me it was, because I didn't invest into her much. So you can run maidens on her, but I personally like to use Petra when I do run Noelle. For Noelle, you should have defense on your sands, defense on your goblet, and ideally healing bonus on your circlet, just to maximize your healing a bit. Now, running her as a support, not a DPS, the only talent you care about is your E, because your Q will increase your DPS when you level it, as you guys can see, but it does not actually increase her healing or anything like that. Her E, however, will increase her healing and like her shield, which is what you're focusing on for a support Noelle, which is why I would recommend prioritizing this talent. Now, I covered Ganyu in my last 2 videos, but she is amazing at everything she does, great at DPSing, great at supporting. So for a support Ganyu, you want 2 Noblesse, 2 Blizzard Strayer because of the raw amount of damage she deals. If you guys don't know, her E and her Q do insane amounts of damage, especially her Q, her Elemental Burst. Against multiple targets, this does insane amounts of damage, especially when paired with someone like Venti. So because of that, 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Blizzard Strayer, definitely the way to go. You want to build her like a normal burst support, whereas you want attack percent on the sands, crowd damage bonus on the goblet, and crit on the circlet, crit being crit rate or crit damage, obviously. Now, sometimes you might need energy recharge, but you can go for that on a substat, and if you're running her support, running something like a Favonius Warbow is actually really good on her. It's definitely the best free-to-play option, and it's just a great option in general because you don't need to prioritize energy recharge as much. You can build more damage, all that stuff, and since you will be proccing this effect literally anytime it's up because of how much your crit you'll have on her and how your ult hits a bunch of times, so it will crit, your E even hits twice. So yeah, basically it just gives you a bunch of particles, which is very nice. There are many other good options though. Verdescent and Blackcliff can be good because they give you crit. Stringless is amazing. It's actually what I tend to use on her. And the best bow for her for support is Skyward Harp for sure, if you do have it. For Kaeya, you'd run him as a burst support, where you're going to be having an energy recharge on your sword if possible. For your artifacts, you'd want a 4-piece Noblesse Oblige on him. And for artifacts, you can build them like any burst support, so attack percent on the sands, cryo damage goblet, or elemental damage goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. Now, I've made many videos on Kaeya DPS, which is why I level his normal attacks, but for a support, be sure to level his E and his Q especially, and not really worry about his normal attacks, because as I said, he's a support, so you're not going to be attacking on him. Also, keep in mind that the scaling on his burst is actually very high. It's comparable to Ganyu's because it's 97 per hit. At level 4, by the way, like it definitely goes up, and it hits multiple times. Now, keep in mind, this is good to level for a burst support. You can also use him purely for reactions and not care about his damage. That works too. You can keep him low investment and just use him as like a melt support. But yeah. So for Chongyun, if you just want him as like a really low investment cryo support, then literally all you need is to keep him level 20. You don't need to get this other talent. But you can get him level 60 out of 70, obviously, if you do actually like him and want to use him. And you can level his burst to level 6, because obviously leveling him up lets you get more talents and gives you this passive. So there's a few ways to build them. Low investment support for Noblesse is good and probably the way to go. But if you're running him as a burst support, if you do invest into him, then there's actually better sets. You'd want the 2-piece Noblesse with either 2-piece Wanderers for a melt support, because the elemental mastery is very nice. And my friend Shadowblood did the numbers, so check him out if you want to, because he knows much more on Chongyun than I do. And if not, 2-piece cryo is also a very good option. 2-piece cryo with 2-piece Noblesse, of course. In order to make him an effective burst support, you'd probably want attack percent on the sands. I've heard energy recharge is viable, but personally attack percent with cryo damage goblet and crit on the circlet is what you'd want to go for if you're running him as a pure burst support. For your weapon, you'd want to prioritize energy recharge, so Skyward Pride, if you have it, is very good for support Chongyun. Favonius Greatsword and Sacrificial Greatsword are also 2 energy recharge claymores that are very good on Chongyun. For Qiqi, I just want to emphasize how important her second talent is, so be sure to get this as soon as possible. Also, the scaling on her burst is absolutely insane, and her E, everything about her E goes up when you level it, so these are 2 talents that you do like to level. For her weapon, you want something with energy recharge. I usually put Sacrificial Sword on her. It's definitely the best because of how long the cooldown on your E is, so having it twice is very nice. For your artifacts, it gets a bit complicated because there's many ways to use Qiqi. For a low investment healer, if you really just want healing, Maidens can be fine, but I don't think Maidens is optimal on Qiqi. If you want to run her like that and use her as like a E healer build, sure, do that, have fun, it's fine. But I personally like other sets better and have tested them and think other sets are more optimal. And I made a full Qiqi guide, but basically even running a 2-piece Exile and like a 2-piece Scholar, literally just to maximize energy recharge, can give you more value than Maidens because Qiqi already heals so much. She heals so much, in fact, that you don't need to build Maidens on her. You can run a 2-piece Noblesse with a 2-piece Cryo set, making her a burst support, even though, yes, her Q costs a lot of particles. Yes, it's hard to get her Q, but having damage when you Q while still healing enough is better than not dealing damage and healing an excessive amount. Anyways, I've been over this in my video. If you want to run her full healer, run literally attack percent on everything, sure. If you want to run her burst support for optimal endgame build, for like Abyss and stuff, then run her attack percent with crowd damage bonus and crit, and literally focus on her burst. But if not, full attack, max healing with like Maidens can work if you just want to overheal. For Diona, there are a few viable sets. You can run 4 Noblesse on her for the nice effect. You can run 4 Instructor even for the elemental mastery, and just the bonus it gives your entire party. 2-piece Maidens can also work. I wouldn't really go for the 4-piece, but 2-piece with another 2-piece like Scholar, Exile, something like that can be pretty good. So overall, I would recommend using her like Bennett. So what I would do is 4-piece Noblesse with energy recharge on the sands, a HP percent goblet as I have on my Bennett, and a healing bonus circlet. For your weapon, you would want something with energy recharge, so a sacrificial bow or a Favonius warbow can be very nice on her. For her talents, I'd say leveling her elemental burst is probably the main one you should be leveling because it does increase your healing. For Fischl, you're looking for a 4-piece Thundering Fury. Usually, you can run 2 Thunder Fury, 2 Glad as well. And the stats you want are attack percent on your sands, electro damage bonus on the goblet, and crit on the circlet. Now, for your weapon, Stringless is usually the way to go. Harp is better if you have it. Stringless is the best 4-star, and there are some decent free-to-play options like Favonius. And even like bows with crit can be really nice, but if you have Stringless or Harp, definitely use those. Beidou actually works very well as an electro burst support who focuses on her elemental burst. So obviously you want to be maxing your burst as soon as possible, and your E is also good to level up, but mainly your burst because of how it works. It's just very nice on her. So because you're trying to maximize your burst, running 2-piece Noblesse Oblige with 2-piece Thunder Fury can be can be ideal for Beidou, and that's what I would recommend running. 2 Thunder Fury, 2 Noblesse with energy recharge on the sands, ideally because you want to be spamming your elemental burst. And then for the goblet, you can run electro damage bonus, obviously, and crit on the circlet. For your weapon is the same as most support claymores, you want energy recharge. So Favonius Greatsword and Sack Sword are 2 good 4-star options. And if you have the Skyward Pride, the 5-star, that is definitely the way to go. It's definitely the best one for support Beidou. So if you were to run Lise as a support, you definitely want her 60 out of 70 because her main benefit as a support is decreasing enemies' defense when she uses Lightning Rose. So because of that, you not only want her 6 out of 70, but you also want to prioritize basically energy recharge because you're going to be spamming her ultimate as often as possible. So because of the ult spam, 4 Noblesse is usually what you're going to want to go, but energy recharge sets can actually be good too, like Scholar or like Exile. So usually if you're running her just for that defense reduction, you'd run Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers on her. If for some reason you want her to deal damage, kind of like Atlas or even like Widsith, but usually you are running her for the defense reduction. So you'd run Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers with energy recharge on like whatever stats you can. And for your goblet, you can actually go for something like Elemental Mastery, or as I said, if you want damage, Electro Damage bonus, but generally Elemental Mastery on the goblet and on the circlet. For Xingqiu, there's a few different ways to actually build them. Usually you can run 2 Noblesse with 2 Hydro Set, since the Hydro Set is just a good 2-piece. For your sands, you can actually run attack percent or energy recharge. It depends on if you need energy recharge or how you're using them. As a reaction support for Diluc, you might want ER more, whereas in general, attack percent might be better, especially if you have a sacrificial sword or enough energy generation and you can afford to run attack, then definitely do it. If not, ER can be fine. Hydro damage on the goblet and crit on the circlet, being either crit rate or crit damage, is the way to go. The best weapon is definitely Sacrificial Sword. I know some people like Skyward Blade better, and it's good. Like, any energy recharge sword on him is good. Use whichever one you can get, but I think Sack Sword overall is the best because you get 2 charges of your E, more particles, and just a ton of energy recharge. Talent-wise, you want to both level your elemental skill and your elemental burst, but especially your burst. So definitely level your elemental burst up to as high as you can as soon as possible. For a support Barbara, you actually don't need to invest too much into her. The weapon you want on her is not Widsith, but Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Definitely the best on her because it gives you HP and an amazing effect, especially because you can refine it pretty easily, even as a free-to-play player. For Barbara's artifacts, she's actually one of the characters whom I recommend Maiden Beloved on. Now, I don't really like the set, but I think for Barbara, who's someone who actually just cares about healing, really nothing else, you can just get Maidens on her so that her E heals you enough to stay alive. And yeah, like her Maiden Beloved is definitely good on her. You can also run 4-piece Noblesse Oblige on her, which is very good and might actually be better. So either 4 Maidens or 4 Noblesse, they both can work on Barbara. For her sands, you probably want energy recharge. HP can work, but once you stack too much HP, like there's no real point anymore. So I think energy recharge on the sands with an HP goblet and a healing bonus on the circlet would be the way to go. Her E and her Q are both important to get because it just increases your healing by quite a lot. I'd say the E increases it more overall, but it depends how you play her. For her talents, her E will increase your healing a lot if you level it up, and then her Q is also nice to level to increase that healing. So definitely get both of these up if you have the resources to. Now we're going to talk about Mona, who I unfortunately don't have. I only have her on my free-to-play account, funnily enough. So the way you want to build her is a burst support, which means 2-piece Noblesse Oblige with another 2-piece set. The best ones are Wanderer's Troop 2-piece and Heart of Death 2-piece. Her best weapons, her best one for burst support is Skyward Atlas if you have it. If not, energy recharge ones like Favonius Codex can be very, very good. You can also run her 4-piece Noblesse Oblige if you just want her as a general support, but I like maximizing her burst. Just so that she can deal a ton of damage and then swap out. Stat-wise, you want to prioritize energy recharge, so you want that on the sands, hydro damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or damage on the circlet. As far as her talents go, you definitely want to prioritize her ultimate, her stellar, her burst. It does so much damage. It's literally insane how much damage this burst deals. So definitely prioritize this. You can also level her elemental skill. It doesn't hurt. It gives you more damage. It's nice, but her burst is definitely the #1 priority. I wasn't sure whether or not I should cover Childe in this video since he's usually used as a DPS, but I think he can actually burst support quite well. I tend to use him in Abyss with my Diluc, where I will mainly be DPSing on Diluc, and then I'll swap to Childe, and his ultimate will just deal like literally 100k, and then I can swap off him. So if you are running him as a burst support, 2 Noblesse with 2 Heart of Depth should be the way to go, just for, you know, raw burst damage. And the way you want to build him is ideally attack on the sands, hydro damage on the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. Now for pure burst, Stringless can actually offer you a ton of damage because, you know, of its amazing passive. Bows that give you crit are also very nice, such as Blackcliff and Verdescent Hunt, and obviously if you have Skyward Harp is amazing. So for Bennett, you want to make sure you have a energy recharge sword, ideally a sword with high base attack. So if you need like a blacksmith weapon, I would argue Rancor is actually better than Iron Sting, usually, because you care more about the base attack than like the other stats that it gives you. So following that logic, 3-star swords aren't recommended for Bennett especially, so ideally a 4-star sword if you have it, like 5-star if you have it, but if not, a 4-star sword with energy recharge and decently high base attack. So Favonius Sword is very, very good for him. If not, Sack Sword and Festering Desire both work, and obviously 5-star swords are very nice. Aquila gives him high base attack, and Skyward Blade is usually the best overall because of high base attack and 55% energy recharge. In order to build him as a pure healer support, 4-piece Noblesse Oblige is insane. I've seen people run Maidens on him, but it's usually suboptimal. 4-piece Noblesse Oblige is very, very good on him because your ultimate already does give a bunch of damage, right? And having that bonus damage from Noblesse is just more of it. It's just really, really good. Now, since Bennett is an alt bot, the stats you'd want are energy recharge, HP, and healing bonus. This is just to maximize your healing. I've seen people with Favonius run like crit rate and stuff, but generally it is ER, HP, healing bonus, and definitely maximize your talent, your Fantastic Voyage. The other two don't really matter as a support. Alright, so for Xinyan, there are 2 different ways to play her. Either a defense, just shield bot, like support, or a burst support. Now she's one of the characters that I personally don't enjoy playing, so I haven't experimented much with her, but I did my research and basically concluded the best build for both ways of playing her. So either you can run her full defense, like literally full defense, sands, goblet, and circlet. For this build, you don't really care about her damage, but you care about maximizing her shield, her utility as a support. In which case, you would level this Sweeping Fervor, her elemental skill, as much as you can, without really caring about the others, like maybe your ult a bit, but mainly this, because the only thing you care about is this defense scaling, making her a pretty effective shield bot, who also has a cleanse, which is very, very nice for Abyss. For this build, you'd run a 4-piece Noblesse Oblige, because once again, she's just a pure support who doesn't really care about like her damage. Now, if you do choose to run her as a burst support, you could run 2-piece Noblesse with another 2-piece, like Crimson Witch of Flames 2-piece, which does give you some power damage bonus, letting your burst do more damage. If you were to do that, you'd run her how you'd run any burst support. The sands, you could either go energy recharge or attack. I tend to believe energy recharge would be better. Pyro damage bonus on the goblet so that your burst actually deals damage, and a crit rate or crit damage circlet. For the second build, you'd want to prioritize maxing your elemental burst for optimal damage. Weapon wise, for defense build, you could run something like the White Blind if you can get it, which is a craftable weapon. This is a decent 3-star, but I'd say go for White Blind if you can for that build. And if you're running her as a burst support, energy recharge is really, really what you want on a claymore. So something like Favonius, something like Sacrificial would be very good. Do note that her E has a very long cooldown, so the Sacrificial Claymore is very, very nice on her. And also, you can use the Skyward one if you do have it. For support Xiangling, there are a few different sets you could run. 4-piece Crimson Witch can work, 4-piece Noblesse can work, and 2 Noblesse with 2 Crimson can also work, since her burst does a ton of damage, so optimizing that burst is very nice for her. Usually you want to prioritize energy recharge on the sands, pyro damage bonus on the goblet, as well as crit on the circlet, so crit damage or crit rate. For her weapon, the best would be Skyward Spine, but if you don't have that, Dragon's Bane can be good, Prototype Star Glitter, which is the one from the Blacksmith, can be good, and even something like Deathmatch, which gives you crit rate, are all good options. Obviously, I'm not mentioning Crescent Pike because this is only for DPS Xiangling. For Xiangling's talents, I would say level both, but especially Pyronado. Like, Pyronado is their main source of damage, and it applies Pyro very fast. So I would recommend leveling Pyronado as much as you can, and you can also level Guoba, but it's not as important. If you want to run Amber as a support, you should run the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige set. I've seen people run like 2 Crimson, 2 Noblesse, or 2 Crimson, 2 Glad for like a DPS support Amber, but I think 4 Noblesse is better as just a pure support. You should go for energy recharge on the sands, power damage bonus on the goblet, obviously, and crit on the circlet. Now, you wouldn't want to prioritize leveling your Q because this is basically why you're using her as a support, to proc reactions and to deal damage from her Fiery Rain. For her weapons, there are a few good ones. Stringless and Skyward Harp obviously are very, very good on like any support archer. Viridescent Hunt can be especially good because you can clump up enemies in your ultimate and you have crit rate. So a lot of good options. Also Favonius Warbow, definitely really good, especially if you're stacking crit on her. And definitely the best free-to-play option. So just a good bow overall. I like Favonius on Ember. Klee's a special one, who I don't have, but she's a special one because you can't really use her as support until C2. When you do get her C2, she can support to decrease enemies' defense, and then you can use her just for that. Also, her C4 helps for supporting, but yeah, so I feel like this section won't apply to most people, so I'm just going to make it very quick. If you want to run her for defense reduction and you don't want to invest into her, just use her for that. You can run Thrilling Tales and just slap on like a 4-piece noblesse or anything and not really care about her damage. But if you do want to use her as like a burst support, someone who actually deals damage and reduces defense, especially if you have C4 or something, you can just run her as a pure burst support, attack percent, pyro damage, and crit rate, right? Sans, Goblet, and Circlet. And you can run a 2-piece Crimson Witch set with a 2-piece Glad. And for Catalyst, you could use basically anything, but I would go for Sacrificial Fragments or Solar Pearl or any of the 5-star ones like Skyward Atlas if you do have it. Alright, let's talk about the main character now. We'll start with Anemo and then we'll go into Geo. For Anemo, obviously you don't want the Viridescent Veneer set. It's just so good on any Anemo support. And she can work as a good Anemo support if you don't have Venti or Sucrose, because she's just pretty good at swirling and clumping enemies with her burst. On your stands, you definitely want Energy Recharge. For her Goblet, you'd want Anemo damage bonus. And for her Circlet, you'd either want crit rate, crit damage, or even attack, depending on her stats. Something to note with this character is that you don't really need to invest into her, like as Anemo, to make her useful. You can keep her very low level, like 20 out of 40, because you're not really using her for her damage as Anemo. You're mainly using her for the Viridescent Veneer set. Just proc Swirl and decrease elemental resistance of the opponent, and that's basically all you need. So overall, you definitely want Energy Recharge on your weapon. So once again, Sack Sword, Festering Desire, and Favonius are all very good options for her. Talent-wise, if you're keeping her low investment, you don't need to level anything, but if you do want to deal damage, leveling Gust Surge is definitely a good idea. Geo MC is a very underrated character who can be used with other Geo characters as an alt battery. She can be paired with Zhongli to solve the energy recharge problems, and can be used for her pretty high scalings, as you guys can see. Therefore, she can deal a lot of damage on a pretty low cooldown, and her burst isn't bad either. So you can either keep her very low investment and just spam her E as like an alt bot to generate particles for your Geo characters, or you can invest into her and make her deal damage with her E and her Q, and so I'm going to show you how to build her for both. Artifact wise, there are a few different options. I would recommend either the 4-piece Petra if your main DPS is elemental, right? So you could pick up the crystal on this character, swap to them, and they'll deal more damage of that element. You can also run a 4-piece Noblesse Oblige, as we've seen with like any support, because it's just good, more burst damage, and especially the 4-piece, which is more attack for everyone. If you want to run her as a pure burst damage support, you can run something like a 2 Petra with another 2-piece, like a 2 Noblesse. Weapon wise, I find Festering Desire to be really good on Geo MC if you are investing into her. Like if you don't level anything and you have Festering, the damage increase won't be that big, but if you actually do invest into her, the E bonus damage will be very nice. Sacrificial Sword is also great and probably the best as an alt battery. If you're using her just for particles, Sack Sword, definitely the way to go. But overall, both these swords are great, and Favonius can work too. And obviously, if you do have Skyward Blade, it's always good on characters that need energy recharge. And if you invest into her, be sure to level both of her abilities. If not, it's not that big of a deal. But if you do want her to deal damage, I would prioritize leveling E and then Q. Very quickly, I would like to talk about the other characters that I haven't mentioned thus far and why I'm not mentioning them. Just so you guys understand. Basically, the characters I didn't cover are characters that can pretty much only be used as main DPS, like Keqing, who, like, the only time she would ever support is basically as a sub DPS for Childe, but even then, you'd still just build her as a DPS, and I want this video to be a support Bible, so I'm only talking about how to build support characters. Characters like Razor that are very selfish, while they could technically like be used for their defense reduction, aren't really support characters, which is why I'm not covering them. Same thing with Diluc, who even if you are building him like as a support, like you're running another DPS with him like Ganyu, you're still going to be building him as a DPS. You just swap him in and use your burst and stuff. So yeah, I tried to cover every character, and the only ones that I didn't, I think there are like 3 or 4, are characters who I consider to be strictly like DPS characters. I know I didn't really go in detail on substats you want on your characters, so keep in mind, usually substats are just like the same as the main stats that you want. Like for burst supports, I want crit damage and, you know, on their circlet or crit rate. Substats are going to be crit as well. The only thing you might add is like more energy recharge, but apart from that, it basically follows the same pattern. And for other supports that just want to alt spam, you're going to be prioritizing energy recharge on both the main stats and substats. I know there's a pretty big chance that I forget some stuff. I really try to do as much research as possible and fact check everything I say, but there's so many characters in this game that like let's say I forget something, I'll be sure to include it in a pinned comment. So because I really don't want to misinform anyone. I always have this fear of misinformation, of misleading people. So I give you guys what seems to be the best for everyone. I really hope it was helpful. But if there is anything that changes, anything new, as I said, I will update it in the pinned comment. So yeah, I hope that helps you guys build every single support. I'm sorry if this video was long. It took a while to record, honestly. I usually don't ask for likes, but this video took so long that if you enjoyed it, definitely like, comment, all that stuff. You know, I appreciate it. And most importantly, follow me on Twitch if you want, because I do enjoy streaming and I stream most nights. So it'd be cool to have you guys there. I hope this video was informative. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Subscribe if you want to. If you don't, that's okay too. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.